My name's Aron Ralston. My parents are down on Larry Ralston of Englewood, Colorado. Whoever finds this, please make an attempt to get it to them. Be sure of it. I would appreciate it.
On April 26, 2003, a man named Aron Ralston is getting set to go canyoneering in Bluejohn Canyon in Utah. Aron only packs enough food and water to last him what he thought was going to be a quick adventure, and heads out without telling anyone where he's going. Aron locks up his bike, and he begins walking through the canyon. About 6 hours later, at 2:45 p.m., Aron is at the section of the gorge that's getting really narrow and dangerous. Below him is about 100 feet until the desert floor. He begins to attempt to walk with 1 foot on each side of the canyon walls, but as he began to maneuver his way through, a huge 800-pound boulder became dislodged above him, pinning him between the boulder and the canyon walls. Aron is suspended 100 feet off the ground and 20 miles away from the nearest road. In a panic, Ralston began to try and pull his arm out, but with no success. Ralston begins to weigh out his options. He didn't tell anyone where he was going, no way to signal for help. 20 miles to the nearest paved road. He knew it would be days before anyone noticed he's missing, and to find him. Considering this was supposed to only be a quick trip, the only food and water he had on him was 2 burritos, 1 bottle of water, a few small candy bars. Ralston's only options to get out of there himself is chip away at the boulder, attempt to move the boulder, or cut his arm off. Aron begins to try and chip away at the boulder, but he soon realizes his cheap pocket knife is no match for the 800-pound boulder. After a long 15 hours of attempting to chip the boulder, Aron moved to his next option and makes a makeshift pulley with rope he had with him and tries moving the rock. But after already being out there for over a day, exhausted, and only 1 arm to pull, he was no match for the 800-pound boulder. Due to dehydration, Ralston's physical and mental health began to deteriorate.
I have very, very little water. My body's having difficulty controlling its temperature. I'm in deep stuff.
As Aron recorded more audio and video on his camcorder, he begins to lose hope and realizes what he has to do to have a chance of making it out alive.
It's pretty much suicide. It's 4 hours from here to my vehicle. Climbing would probably be impossible with 1 hand. The blood loss and my dehydration, I think, are ruling that out. I think I would die if I cut my arm.
The next day, Ralston grabbed his dollar store pocket knife and began to attempt to break his skin. With the blade being so small and dull, he was barely able to even draw blood.
Jesus. I tried cutting my arm off. I couldn't even barely break the skin with this stupid knife. I tried a couple different blades, and all I did was just mark myself up. I could barely even get any blood to draw.
The next day, Ralston begins to attempt the amputation once again. Considering how dull the knife is, instead of cutting his arm, he begins to make small stabs in attempt to start and break the skin. But he quickly realizes the knife is too small and too dull to get through his bone, and he decides to put the amputation on hold. The next day, Aron started to lose hope that he would make it through another day. He recorded a video for his parents and stated the entire day consisted of him daydreaming about his life and that his parents even appeared in front of him at one point. He even recalls having a vision about his future child. Aron started to think again about how he could get out of the canyon and realized he did not need to use his dull knife and came up with a different plan. He needed to break his arm.
It came to me, this epiphany that I could break the bones because my arm was caught so tightly that I could torque myself. The other bone.
Torque, a basic principle to a former engineer like Ralston. Remember, he had made an initial attempt to amputate his arm 2 days before, only to realize there was no way his pocket knife could slice through the bones. But if he could break them, maybe he'd have a chance. He would have to snap both of the bones in his arm to make it work.
And so I slammed my body against the opposite wall. I grabbed the backside of the boulder and even got my feet up to where I was standing halfway up the wall and grabbing the backside of the rock and humping my body over it until finally that bottom bone snapped. And this pow sound went kind of echoing through the canyon. And I don't even know if I started feeling excited at that point, but I just knew the next thing that I had to do was that I had to break the other bone. And so I grabbed the bottom side of the rock and pushed and tried to sink myself down until I was pushing up to create the downward leverage on the top bone until it too made the same noise, pow, and snapped in the same spot, thankfully, right where my wrist was caught. They both broke right along here, just behind the bones of my wrist.
After cutting through arteries, nerves, and tendons, Aron finally staggered back, hitting the wall behind him. This gave Aron a whole new hope and motivation to make it out of there alive.
And then, boom, and I wasn't even attached anymore, and I fell down like this, and I was free.
Ralston is now faced with the difficult task of getting out of the canyon. Aron climbs 65 feet with only one arm. He gets to the trail, and he runs 6 miles until luckily he happened to run into a group of hikers, who stayed with him and called for help. Emergency services arrived in a helicopter just in time. Aron got the medical treatment he needed, and is now a motivational speaker and engineer. His miraculous survival story will live on for decades.